Once upon a time, in the year 1187, the Third Crusade happened because Jerusalem was taken over by a Muslim leader named Saladin. European kings wanted to take it back, so they led a big military campaign called the Third Crusade. Three important kings were in charge: Frederick I Barbarossa from Germany, Philip II from France, and Richard I from England. But even with these powerful leaders, the crusade didn't go as planned. They never even got to attack Jerusalem. Along the way, they did manage to capture some cities like Acre and win a few battles, but they eventually ran out of steam. By the time they reached Jerusalem, they didn't have enough soldiers or resources to fight Saladin's army. Saladin was a really strong leader who united Muslim forces against the Crusaders. He had already taken over many cities in the Middle East, including Jerusalem. Surprisingly, he wasn't too harsh on the Christians he captured. He let some of them go if they could pay a ransom and allowed others to stay in Jerusalem as a protected group. The Pope called for another crusade to retake Jerusalem and some holy relics, like the True Cross. Three big kings, Frederick I Barbarossa, Philip II, and Richard I, answered the call. It was a big deal because these were some of the most powerful leaders in Europe at the time. And so, the Third Crusade began. And Frederick I Barbarossa, the Holy Roman Emperor, was the first to gather his troops for the Third Crusade. He led his army through Thrace in the spring of 1100. The Byzantine Emperor Isaac II Angelos was a bit nervous about this big Western army passing through his land. On the other hand, the Crusaders were also suspicious of Isaac's friendship with Saladin, the Muslim leader. When Frederick's army reached Adrianople in Thrace, the Byzantines started helping them more. But once the Germans moved on into Anatolia, the Byzantine emperor probably breathed a sigh of relief. However, tragedy struck on June 10, 1190. Frederick fell from his horse into a river in southern Cilicia and drowned, or some say he had a heart attack while swimming. This was a big blow to the crusade because many of his soldiers either died from disease or went back home feeling disheartened. Now, the crusade had to rely on the English and French armies, who weren't exactly best friends. Some German soldiers did manage to reach Acre in the Middle East, but losing Frederick was a huge setback for the whole campaign. Meanwhile, Richard I of England, also known as Richard the Lionheart, chose to sail to the Middle East. He put all his kingdom's resources into the campaign, gathering a fleet of 100 ships and 60,000 horses. On the way, he captured Messina on Sicily in 1190 and then Cyprus in May 1191. Cyprus was ruled by a rebel leader, Isaac Komnenos, who Richard defeated. The islanders had to pay heavy taxes to support Richard's campaign. In France, Philip II gathered his army and set sail for the Levant. He had 650 knights, 1,300 squires, and lots of infantry. They traveled to Acre on Genoese ships. The Third Crusade was turning into a massive effort, with armies from all over Europe joining the cause. And the next big event in the crusade was the Siege of Acre. The city had been under siege for a while when the Crusaders arrived. Guy of Lusignan, the king of Jerusalem, was leading the siege but was struggling against Saladin's army. Luckily for Guy, reinforcements arrived just in time. Frederick's remaining troops, a German force led by Duke Leopold of Austria, and French armies led by Henry of Champagne, Richard I, and Philip II all joined the fight. By early June 1191, the Crusaders were ready to take on Acre. They bombarded the city with catapults for weeks, but the breakthrough came when Richard's engineers dug tunnels under the walls. Richard's reputation as a brilliant military leader and divisions within Saladin's army also played a part in the victory. Finally, on July 12, 1191, Acre fell to the Crusaders. This victory was significant because they captured 70 ships from Saladin's navy along with the city. Richard, who had been ill during the siege, ordered the execution of 500 prisoners, tarnishing his reputation as a good king. After the victory, Guy of Lusignan was made the new king of Cyprus, which Richard sold to the Knights Templar to raise more funds for the crusade. Unfortunately, Philip II had to return home due to political problems, leaving Richard as the only king leading the crusade. And after the siege of Acre, the Crusaders set their sights on Jaffa, an important port that supplied Jerusalem. On their way, Saladin decided to confront them in a big battle at Arsuf on September 7, 1191. The fighting was intense, with both sides using their cavalry and infantry. The Crusaders eventually won the battle, but Saladin's losses weren't too heavy. He had to retreat to the safety of the nearby forest. The Crusaders then continued to Jaffa to rest and plan their next move. Richard wanted to secure Egypt first, but most Crusaders were eager to head straight for Jerusalem. So they moved towards the Holy City, capturing strategic castles along the way to protect their supply lines. However, by January 1192, they were still 19 kilometers away from Jerusalem, and their supplies were running low due to bad weather and constant battles. Richard realized that even if they took Jerusalem, they wouldn't be able to hold it against Saladin's counterattack. The loss of Frederick's army was deeply felt, and the Crusaders knew they couldn't risk another failed siege. Instead, Richard negotiated a peace deal with Saladin at Jaffa in August 1192. The Crusaders had to give up the fortress of Ascalon and a small strip of land around Acre. In return, Saladin promised safe treatment for Christian pilgrims visiting the Holy Land. Despite not achieving their original goal, Richard salvaged something from the crusade. He recognized that attacking Egypt would be a better strategy for future crusades. Indeed, the Fourth Crusade would later adopt this plan, albeit with its own complications. And so, the Third Crusade came to an end, with Jerusalem still in Muslim hands. But the dream of retaking the Holy City was not entirely abandoned. There was always the possibility of a Fourth Crusade in the future,